I'm an ESL teacher, well, only 20% of the time, and we're going to get started. Vamos a comenzar. Muy bien. Kieran?
Good morning, I'm Kieran Connor. I'm an ESL teacher here as well, and thank you for coming.
We're going to do some mic juggling this morning. My name is Pa Tao. I'm also an ESL teacher here at the high school. And to get started, we are going to talk about our program a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, we have an activity. We would like you to just get to know your table partners if you haven't met already, introduce yourselves, and talk about what you did over the summer. But we would like you to do this without using the letters T and R. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that. Get to know each other. All right, so how did this introductory activity go?
Horrible.
Horrible. Why? Hands, please.
It was there. It was huge. Huge hassle. Yeah.
Hassle, okay.
Speak. Songs.
Whoa, tricky.
You may use the letters R and T now.
Oh, no, I have to be able to.
Anyone else?
Cost a lot of energy.
Costs a lot of energy, okay.
I felt really limited in what I could say, and I wanted to get to know them, but I couldn't.
Great, yeah, good point.
I felt like I had to write it out before I was willing to speak it.
Okay.
Make sure that I wasn't going to.
Sure, okay, great. Anyone else? So the whole point of this activity was just to get you to start thinking about how it feels like to be an ELL in this school, in this country. And so throughout this workshop, we'll be having various activities that'll get you thinking about what it's like to be an ELL.
So I'm just going to walk you through. I'm going to walk you through the program here. Just give a little background on English as a second language program. We'll start with our mission. The mission of our program is to promote and enrich academic language learning for linguistically and culturally diverse students. Focus on the academic language. Our vision: we recognize and build upon the rich cultural heritage, knowledge, and lived experiences that our students and families bring to the community. And here's a little program at the high school where we offer a content-based ESL program. Our students receive specific ESL instruction that is structured around the academic content. Principal goal is developing academic English skills and progressing through core content material. This is where all of you come in. And here's a little bit of background on the English language learners that we have. There are now more than 500 students. In some cases, it could be a second or third, in some cases. Just total languages other than English. The backgrounds of English language learners are as varied as the languages they speak. Some are recent immigrants seeking refuge. Some are just looking for greater economic opportunities and or reuniting with family members currently living here in the U.S. Others are from migrant families seeking seasonal employment. And some are from families studying or working in the United States just for a designated time. Some students have been recently adopted into American families. They have English-speaking parents. Many were born in the United States and raised in homes in which English is not the primary language, and that's the thing we want to stress. Most of our ELLs were actually born here in the U.S. Take a second and see if you can think about some students you have had and see if you can, if any of those have applied to any of the students you've had in class. Can you reflect, can you think back on any of the students you've come across? Well, here we're going to show a video of some famous Latinos that you may or may not know. Listen closely.
Me llamo Joaquín Rodríguez, vengo de Córdoba, Argentina. Yo estoy en 10º grado y lo que me gusta de ser latino es que tenemos muchas fiestas y pasamos tiempo en familia. ¿Cómo están? Me llamo José Eduardo García Morales. Vengo de México, pero originalmente de Veracruz. Estoy en el 12º grado y lo que más me gusta de ser latino es el baile y la música.
Hola, mi nombre es Juan Carlos Pérez, yo nací en la Ciudad de México, mi mamá es de México y mi padre es de España. Tengo 16 años y lo que más me gusta es ser latino, que la comunidad tiene más aún. Y soy inmigrantes.
Me llamo Jesús Gaitán Torrijos, soy del Estado de México, estoy en el 10º grado y lo que me gusta más de ser latino es el tono de mi piel, porque a todos me gusta.
Me llamo Rafa Escafi, soy de Perú, estoy en el grado 11. Lo que me gusta más de ser latina es que los amigos son como familia.
Hola, me llamo Cristian Jesús Segura, soy de Wisconsin, pero mi padre es de México y mi madre es de Nicaragua. Estoy en 10º grado y lo que me gusta ser de latino es que puedo hablar español con mi padre y mi madre.
Hola, soy Emer Avelino, yo nací en Chicago, mis papás son de México y algo que me gusta de ser latina es que hay muchos diferentes países.
Como que vinirías, estoy en el 12º grado y lo que más me gusta de ser latino es la comida, pasar el tiempo con mi familia y celebrar las celebraciones culturales de mi país, en Honduras. Sí.
Me llamo Mirayo y nací en Chicago, mis padres son de México y lo que me gusta de ser latina es que siempre comemos en
Mi nombre es Miguel Ángel, yo soy de Perú y he vivido acá por 8 años. Soy del 9º grado y voy a tener que decir lo que me gusta más de ser latino es como yo soy especial acá culturalmente.
Me llamo Carmen Guterres Martínez, vengo de la Ciudad de México y estoy en el 11º. Lo que me gusta de ser latina es de que las personas son muy calurosas.
Hola, mi nombre es Paola, mi mamá es de Costa Rica y mi papá es de Colombia. Estoy en el grado 11. Lo que más me gusta de ser latina es que no somos todos iguales, tenemos diferentes comida y tradiciones, cada uno mejor de la otra.
Okay. Okay, so my name's Nina Molina again, and what I like about being Latina is the fact that I get to teach those wonderful kids every day. So they're all from my Spanish for Spanish speakers class, and they're a wonderful group, very diverse, with very different backgrounds and very different levels of proficiency in Spanish as well. Okay, so I'm going to go over some acronyms, and then we'll talk a little bit about bilingualism. You have probably heard many different acronyms related to our ESL program, and it can get a little bit confusing. Usually we talk about our ESL program, or English as a Second Language. We don't talk about our ELL program because it's not a program, okay? So ESL, English as a Second Language, would be the name of the program. The three of us are ESL teachers, okay? ELL refers to the students. They're English language learners. So I'm an ESL teacher, I teach ELLs. Does that make sense? So I wouldn't say, oh, I'm an ELL teacher. I'm an ESL teacher, I teach ELLs. Then we have TESOL, teachers of English to speakers of other languages, because when we get English language learners, they're not necessarily learning English as a second language. They may well speak 3 or 4 more languages. So it's not always English as a second language. Sometimes we even talk about English as a simultaneous language, okay? ELP, English Language Proficiency, and that's the numbers that you're going to see, and Karen will explain that a little bit later. Their level of proficiency, and it usually refers to academic language. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then the IAP, it's the Individual Accommodation Plan, and that's a form that you will get that has some of the most important information you need to know in order to make accommodations for your ESL or ELLs? ELLs, okay? And then we have the English Language Development, just another acronym, you know where they are in terms of how, what their language development is, okay? Now, how are ELLs identified? Well, when they register at the district office, families fill out a form, and in the form, we're required to tell the district whether, well, not required, we're asked to tell the district whether or not we speak a different language at home. And at that point, then the students are identified as ELLs. Yes?
What happens if you don't have someone in the district who can translate for that family? Does that ever happen where the whole family only speaks their native language?
Well, yeah, usually they call one of the ESL teachers because they know, well, if the family cannot speak English at all, we have an ELL automatically right there. And then we'll need to provide services depending on, well, their home language and all that. So, usually, I mean, we usually get students who have a Spanish-speaking background or Hmong background, and it's not that hard to identify them. Although I think a few years ago, we had a few students in the district who were never identified because the families refused to write down that they spoke another language at home. And that's when we have a little bit of a problem. Okay. So an English language learner may be identified as any student who indicates on the home language survey that a language other than English is spoken in the home. Now I want you to think, why is this significant? Why is the fact that a student speaks another language at home significant in terms of teaching and learning? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you said communication with school. Okay, so parent-school communication, expectations. What else? Yep.
Well, yeah, there's a whole mindset that goes with a certain language, certain ways depending on how we
Yes. Yes. Language is culture. Mm-hmm. Right. So they probably perceive the world differently. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Now, usually as teachers, when we know that a student is bilingual or that they speak another language at home, we tend to think, oh, they're bilingual, they speak another language. Maybe if we spoke the language, everything would be solved. And that's not the case because there are many different kinds of bilingual students. There are different levels of bilingualism, and I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, okay? So there is a classification according to the age of an individual. You could be an early bilingual, and that's actually the ideal. When kids enter our schools, and there's a theory of a critical age period where you learn, when you learn a foreign language, and if you're under 13, you can be considered an early bilingual student if you're learning either the languages simultaneously or sequentially. So we have early bilinguals, the ones who learn both languages at the same time. That would be the case of my son, who's 8 years old, and he's been learning English at school since he was born here, but we speak Spanish at home all the time. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean that he's fully proficient in English and Spanish? Not necessarily. In fact, many times since he was probably 4, and you would ask him in English, "How old are you, Mateo?" He would respond, "I have 6." Which means he's transferring the structure from Spanish into English. And same thing happens when he's speaking Spanish, he will have structures in English. So it actually takes a while for them to be fully bilingual, even though they're learning both languages simultaneously. It's not easy, okay? Well, then we have sequential bilinguals, those kids who learn first a language and then they go to school, and maybe at the age of 10 or 11, they start learning their second language, okay? And then like bilinguals, most people who learn the second language or foreign language once you're older than 13, which is my case and which is why I will always have an accent. Does that make sense? Yep. Thank you. There's also a classification according to the skill. You can be a passive bilingual, and I'm sure some of you might be passive bilinguals, meaning you understand the language spoken by your parents, but you can't speak it. And a lot of times, your parents will talk to you in their native language, and you will talk back to them in English. And we have a lot of students in our program like that. So the fact that they come from Mexico, and they could probably speak fluent English to you, doesn't really mean that they speak Spanish, especially if they were born here. And that's when things get really complicated, okay? Because they go to my Spanish class, and there's no Spanish there either. They can only understand it, okay? Dominant bilingual, in which case one of the two languages is the dominant language. In my case, my dominant language would be Spanish. You could be a balance. And when you're dominant bilingual, you speak better one language than the other. You're more proficient. Then you have a balanced bilingual. You speak both languages very similarly, but you can tell that one of the languages is not your native language. All right? And then finally, we have which is the ideal for a bilingual person. It hardly ever happens. I've probably met 2 people in my life who are completely equilingual, meaning they speak both languages like a native speaker, and they can read and write in the 2 languages, and nobody can tell that they're not a native speaker.
Okay. Hello. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the students that we have in the district. Does anyone know roughly how many students we have in the district as of last year? Over 500. Any guesses? 517. Okay. Well, here are the numbers. Some elementary schools. If I have a math teacher out there, maybe you can add these up for me. And notice how we have it separated into levels 1 through 3. These are our beginner levels, our lowest levels of ELLs. Middle and high school. So we actually have, as of last year, 584 ELLs enrolled in the district. And as of this week, we've had at least 10 new additions to our department here at the high school. So every year, our students are required to take the access test. It's an annual test that measures the students' progress in reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills in English. And this is where we get our ELP, our English Language Proficiency levels from. The students receive a number anywhere from 1 to 6 as a score. And we use these scores to help schedule their classes and also to monitor how their English language development is proceeding. Karen will talk about the IAP a little.
Okay, so that was the background, and now we're going to get into what we have to do as educators and coming up with a plan for how do we help educate these students. And so what we've come up with as a district is what's called an IAP. An IAP is a district document, individualized accommodation plan, used to help teachers understand the background of each individual ELL based on their English language proficiency level. The IAP indicates the language and content goals as well as some academic needs of each student in order to be successful. Well, what does this look like? In the past, we've handed out paper copies, and the district has been moving to do this online. So where you can go to view this information for ELLs is in Infinite Campus. The quick and dirty of it is you can, if you go to your student on your student roster and they have a flag, you can hover your mouse over the flag and it'll give you a quick number where that student is at, 4.3, 3.2, depending on the student. And that'll give you a real quick background Otherwise, you can click on, and we have a student at 1.9. Otherwise, you can go to the index tab there and click on PLP, which is about third down in the student information. You click on PLP and it'll give you a series of 5 tabs here, and the middle one is Documents tab. Click on this tab and it'll bring you to this page, and you can double click on this link here and open it up, and this is where we try to come up with a plan for each individual English language learner. And to the best of our ability, we also give some background information on if parents at home speak or write in English, and if you can contact them. Now this is a 2-page document online on Infinite Campus here, and as Pa scrolls down a little bit, we have some accommodations that we may decide to use to see if this will help the student, and then we'll reassess how well this works. Scrolling all the way down to the bottom, in some cases we provide for extra time, or a hope is maybe you can give a paper back and allow the student to revise their work, and ensuring that they will perhaps better understand or have another chance to improve their academic English. And we base this off of their access data, the tests that we have to give them every year, a test that's in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And this information is also found on Infinite Campus, and this is what we mostly do, is try to decide what the best plan for these students is. When you're looking at a student, the general information, the original sort of page that pops up, there's an assessment tab they can click on, and it'll show plan, ACT scores, and then it'll show access if they've taken the access. You click on the access score, and it'll break it down into different components there. And on your handout, there's an illustration of 2 different students there and the scores they received. Anything you notice about the scores on listening, reading, or speaking? Just take a quick look. Anything jump out at you?
A lot of ing, present participle verbs, entering, reaching, bridging.
Very nice, thank you. I'd forgotten that term.
Well, it means they're in the process of.
Yes.
Well, I think it's kind of odd that by the 319, we put them at a 1.8, whereas a 428, which doesn't seem that much higher, you're at 6.
Yeah. So what they do when they decide the overall level, they actually go by a scale score, and not these sort of ELP delineations, and that using all the scores together, they've come up with a formula for what the overall level is. Many times there are students who are level 6 and considered fully English proficient by the state of Wisconsin, but their writing may be a 4.2 and lagging behind and not quite up to par with the rest of their classmates. So good, thanks for pointing that out. Well, let's examine those participles more, Eric. We have a little activity here for you that Paul will walk you through.
So in front of you, you have some pile of yellow cards, and I would like you to take those apart, spread them out, work with your group members, and we would like you to match the category with the description with an ELP level.
He's better.
There's a category. There are categories, descriptions, and levels.
We had two groups of cards. Should we use both of them?
Boom, nailed it.
Probably wrong though.
Oh, probably not.
We're right.
We'll
Hello.
We'll see.
Did my duty.
Do we have any
But it's not a race.
discrepancies? Do we have any discrepancies? Maybe you can talk about those.
Yeah, they're stupid.
I'm Brian. I know.
Pretty confident?
We right?
I'll show you the answers.
All right, let me check it, see what you think.
Okay, so as you can see, we have 6 levels. And here are levels 1 through 3. So level 1s. All right, can we come back together? Level 1s would be your entering students. Those would be your newcomers who are brand new to the United States and speak little to no English. Level 2 would be a beginning student. They might be beginning to socialize with their peers, but still very, very little academic English. And at level 3, their social English is blooming, but they will still struggle with academic English. At level 4, students can carry on a conversation with their peers for hours, can carry a conversation on with you, but they will continue to struggle with academic English. At level 5, they are fluent in social English, but nearing fluency in academic. And at level 6 is when students are considered to be as proficient as native English speakers. And that is when they test out of our program.
I just wanted to add that their levels of proficiency, it
So in that case, how many years do you think it takes for someone to reach near native proficiency, a level 6? Any volunteers? How many years on average? 9 to 10 years. Anyone else? 15, okay. Oh, my little thing isn't popping up. So anywhere, actually, research shows from, 5 to 10 years or even beyond 10 years. So what does this mean for a newcomer student who is a level 1, who's entering the United States at the 10th grade level? He's over 13, so he's past his critical period. What else? It'll take him a few years to reach level 3. What about by the time he graduates? It'll be difficult for this student to reach proficiency by the time he or she graduates. And so we have to be thinking about these kinds of things as instructors of ELLs. At this point, what are your questions for us?
Based on that, comment that you just made, is there ever any application to just teach subject matter in their native language for the students so that it reduces learning content, basic skills, etc., even though you may not be talking in English?
Ideally, that would be, what we would do. But, with our resources, we can't do that for every student. And so what's really helpful is to have our bilingual assistants who are able to support classes that students are in and are able to maybe reteach the material in their native language after the fact or before the class. That's what we have right now.
They do offer biology and Spanish, for example, depends on the number of students that enroll in that class. So it has to do with numbers.
Sure.
So along with that, do we have people in our district or resources, tutors that speak the languages of all of our students? We have access to people to the university.
We might, but college students are college students, and we get volunteer tutors, coming into our school, but they're not all, they're not necessarily bilingual tutors, and so it's very difficult when you have a student who speaks a language that, no one else in even the city speaks, so. Right.
So it's a combination of both the content area and the language, which is really hard to get.
Do they offer the ACT and SAT in a variety of languages, or is that English?
I don't know the answer to that. Do we have any counselors that can speak to that? I don't think so. They do.
And then are there college programs for ELLs if they're not proficient yet, or do they have to go?
Depending on the college, I know that UW-Madison does have a program for first generation college students, and I know that METC does have resources, but it all depends on the college.
Yesterday we spent some time in PAC talking about rigorous and informational texts and really making sure that we have, because of the Common Core standards, more informational texts in all of our subjects and making them rigorous. Well, many of us read things about music and I have absolutely no business. But
a state and federal law that we have to identify the students who are labeled as English language learners. And actually, for the first 2 years that they reach level 6, we still have to monitor them and make sure that they're performing well enough in academic content areas. So yes, the label does stay on, but I don't believe that, I can't speak to if that label follows them to schools. It's more for a district and a state level. The state reports, we have to report to the state. Yeah.
Is Spanish the predominant language? I mean, you showed most of the Spanish speakers, but you said there was 31 languages. Is Spanish the most predominant, or the other ones the most predominant?
In the district, Hmong is the largest. We have the largest population of Hmong speakers for second language. And after that is Spanish. And after that is Mandinka, and then on and on.
Do you have a list somewhere in the language? I'm curious to see what they are.
I could find, I could get a list to you if you need. Yeah.
Is that down?
Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move into where you guys are all experts and talking about the academic content and the language that we need to try to get our ELLs to be proficient in, to be successful in high school and beyond. I just want to talk about social versus academic language and the differences between those two. Social academic is typically learned a lot faster, and this is more casual and conversational. Hi, what's up? Nice to meet you. Yo. These are things that will be picked up as you speak with an English language speaker. The academic language is what takes a lot longer to develop and master, and we break this down into two different categories: brick words and mortar words. Brick words are sort of the traditional vocabulary words that you might teach in class, or specific, the proper nouns that Buell was talking about in his presentation. Those are content area specific words. Mortar words are the words that are sort of the glue that hold together all the bricks to build up this wall of academic knowledge. And these mortar words are used across content areas and may have multiple meanings. Some examples of brick words there in the different, in some different content areas are up there. Reciprocal, obtuse, force. And then you take a look at the mortar words that are used as well to sort of build up your academic knowledge. These also need to be worked on and developed by the English language learners as they progress through their core content material.
So it's important to remember that students don't always know these mortar words, and so it might be important to explicitly teach, if then in your class. What works for ELLs might work for all students. So that's just something that people
Not to say that you have to build a whole new lesson now on mortar words, but to keep that in mind, perhaps you get a paper back from a student, maybe you're just looking to grade for the vocabulary words, but keep in mind that maybe you can allow for an edit or redo if some of those other mortar words aren't quite in place there, or offer suggestions. Just want you to keep this in the back of your mind as you're looking at student work. Before we dive into the real good work here of us all working together on academic content, we are going to show a short video, and during this time, if you need to gather your materials, if you didn't bring some stuff with you, then you can take this opportunity to go get your stuff. Otherwise, please remain here and watch this short video. Also, if you need to use the restroom, this is be a good time to do that.
What kind of materials did you want us to have?
Materials could be in the form of tests, assessments that you may use in your classroom, that you may want to look at to see how better we can have ELLs access the material. Okay.
I get that all the time in Dubai.
Okay. Thank you.
Plot to a brickwork.
A plot? Plot, yeah. Mhm. And this is, you're talking about math, right?
English.
English? Okay.
No, so maybe
Okay.
chromosome.
Chromosome, sure. This would be a, like a brick word, like a, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
I was gonna say a mortar word would be like justify.
Sure. Okay. Duplication. So good. So as you go through, just keep this in mind that all these words all together are going to help build the academic knowledge that these ELLs will need to succeed. Pa is going to talk to you about some accommodations now.
So before we dive into accommodations, I have a little activity again. In front of you, you have the white poster paper and a few markers. And I would like you to put yourselves into put your mind into the mind of a student who is just newly arrived in Japan. Your teacher is standing up here, giving you a lesson. She's teaching. And your goal is to figure out what the lesson is about. You need to listen carefully, and you need to pay attention. And also, on your poster paper, I would like you to think about these 5 questions and jot down your thoughts.
The Japanese tradition. 箸、刺す、挟む、切る、混ぜる。そんな便利な食器。ナイフでもフォークでもありません。箸です。日本での食事には必ず箸が使われます。このまっすぐな棒が箸です。片方の手で2本使います。素材は様々です。伝統的な竹製、鮮やかなプラスチック製、動物の骨でできた高級なものもあります。中でも割り箸と呼ばれる木製の箸は、ほとんどの飲食店でサービスされます。使うときに割ります。基本の割り方。1、細い方を下にして垂直に上から5分の3の部分を両手で持ちます。2、指先に力を入れ左右に引きます。左右均等に力を入れましょう。どちらかに力が偏るとまっすぐに割れません。注意。割り箸を割るときは必ず脇を締めましょう。脇が開いていると肘が当たって思わぬ事故になる場合があります。上手に割れましたか？はじめは誰
So go ahead and jot down your thoughts as a group. don't have any Japanese speakers over here, do we?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you guys can go ahead and write on the poster board, poster paper.
Let's just write here, okay? So, number one. I want to do number one. And then I'm gonna put.
Okay, so if we can come back together, I would like volunteers to talk about numbers 1, 4, and 5. 1, 4, and 5. Volunteers.
1, 4, and 5.
Yes.
We thought that it was about chopsticks.
Okay, and how did you, why did you think it was about
There were 2
chopsticks?
reasons. One is we caught a glimpse of the title.
Okay.
And the second is I had some background knowledge that the word hashi was chopsticks.
Okay.
Chopsticks in Japanese.
All right, so we have some advantage over here. Number 4 and 5.
Number 4? You're asking me? How did we feel after it? Felt like we didn't learn anything.
Okay, that's fair. And number 5.
Number 5, it would have helped if we had visual support so we could utilize all of our senses.
Sure, excellent. Another table. What was the topic? How did you feel?
Topic to the topic. After the lesson, we felt humble, confused, angry, and checked out. And what would help us understand the lesson? Visuals, hand gestures, facial expressions, and translations.
Awesome, thank you. Other tables who didn't think it was chopsticks. Who maybe didn't catch a glimpse of the title.
We didn't cheat.
We thought it had something to do with like counting or numeration, just by the way that there was like the first few words were just very like 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it.
Sure. And how did you feel? How did your group feel?
We felt helpless, lost, or didn't have any real clue. We were just kind of going off those sounds.
Sure. And again, this may be how your ELLs are feeling in your classrooms. And so we will teach the lesson again, but this time we will be watching the video. And I would like you to answer these 5 questions once again. Go ahead and answer these 5 questions once again. Okay, if we can come back together, I would like a few other groups to share their ideas this time around. And I would like you to comment on number 3 and number 5. How about 3, 4, and 5? 3, 4, and 5.
What else was the visual and the limited subtitles?
Okay.
We felt like we got definitely more
you know, we were listening the first time, I didn't necessarily catch that. But we also thought that the comedy,
Sure.
it made it a little bit more fun.
Mhm.
And we got kind of the message on where to get them and how it's pressure to use
Sure.
things. And in addition to other subtitles, we just thought like it'd be nice if we were in the classroom to actually have pair ourselves.
Sure.
So more interaction.
Great ideas. Yeah.
Same thing. I would just add if I was in the student mindset, I would be worried about what was coming next. Because I could tell you what I learned in my language, English, but I couldn't say it back in Japanese.
Okay. Great observation. Other groups, how did you feel? What would have helped? What did help?
Well, we addressed two more because we took it from the big picture. If I was that student in there, I would feel the stress because we made a lot of assumptions even when we saw the visual. And then the next day they're going to add more to it. And what do we do this? And then let's say we learn 1/3. Well, you know, in our system, 1/3 is not passing.
Sure.
So that puts on the kids. So we just can't assume these like motor words and the words. We got to make sure they understand that. So it transfers over it. You can't assume it.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you. Other ideas, comments, suggestions? Okay, thanks for your participation. So we'll move on to accommodations now. And Nina will go over some things you can do in the classroom.
Okay, so after this Japanese lesson, you probably have more ideas on how to accommodate your ELLs. And I think one of the first things, when you don't have as many visuals, I would say keep your language simple. Simple. You know, as an English language learner myself, it is really hard to follow when you're speaking and you're using a lot of idioms. I have an anecdote with my friend Candy Douglas. We carpooled together. And once I remember her saying, well, you know, Nina, I'm no spring chicken. And I thought, okay, she's no spring chicken. And I was thinking, what does that mean? She would say it every now and then. And then one day I said to her, what do you mean you're no spring chicken? Well, I'm not that young anymore. Oh, I learned this, you know. And so I was thinking about it. And then another time I wanted to use the phrase myself, the idiom, and I go, you know, Candy, and I was thinking, okay, it was a bird in a season, but I couldn't really make the connection. And I went, you know, I'm no fall rooster. And she was like, what are you talking about? You know that phrase, I'm not young anymore? Oh, you mean you're no spring chicken. So, you know, try to avoid using all those Wisconsin idioms that are so hard for us to understand. It takes a long time for you to actually get used to them. So keep it really simple, keep it consistent too. If you try and use the same words over and over again, that helps a lot. I also remember how I learned the phrase, first of all, because I had a teacher who would say it all the time, first of all, and I thought, what is that? First of all, and I thought it was just one word, until one day I said, Mr. So-and-so, I can't remember his name, I said, what do you mean, first of all? First of all, he was like, oh, you mean first of all, and then he wrote it for me, and then I was like, oh, that's so simple. Of course I knew what it meant, but it's just the way you pronounce it, and it sounds like one word. Again, if you keep repeating and the students hear it again and again, they will remember it, and then they will ask you one day what it means, and it helps. Clear directions in writing and broken down into steps. If you make your sentences short and simple and clear, that helps a lot too. And that's actually a lot of things, it's a lot of what we do in the ESL room. We try and clarify directions from you guys. So slow speech, of course. Has anyone ever been exposed to a foreign language and you have the feeling that they speak so fast that there's no spaces in between the words? Así es exactamente como uno se siente cuando ustedes están hablando inglés, que hablan demasiado rápido. Parece que no hay espacio entre una palabra y la otra. Right? Okay, do I sound like there's no space? That's how you guys sound too. So if you can slow it down a little bit, that would be great. Repetition, we talked about repetition. Gestures, I saw Chrissy using a lot of gestures when she was trying to communicate with no T's and R's, and I think that helped a lot. You know, going like this and going like this, and don't be afraid of mimicking, because the thing is, you make classes more fun too when you do a lot of this and that rather than, just. So that helps. Visuals and graphic organizers. Vocab development, what helps a lot with our ELLs is using flashcards. Let's say that you're going to teach a unit on, I don't know, reproduction. Or if you can have all of your brick words spelled out in flashcards and give it to your students and have them repeat and go over them over and over again, that helps too. Student interaction, time to talk. Let them talk to their peers. It's okay for them to socialize too and talk about academic language, but also socialize. That helps. And you talk to your students too and explain things. And incorporate the 4 domains of language: speaking, writing, reading, and listening. Especially because sometimes when you speak a foreign language, you're usually stronger in one or the other. So it helps to be exposed to speaking, writing, reading, and listening constantly.
Is this something that you can share on group-wise?
Yes,
And
definitely.
I would also add, like you just said, to, when you're introducing yourself to your students, just say, if I say something that you don't understand, it's okay to ask. Like, first of all.
Like, first of all, yes. Yes.
I just want to reinforce and support so much of what Nina and Kieran are saying, and I want to point out on this list 2 things. One is that there is no place on this list that says translation. And that's really important. A lot of you know that I also work with the Spanish speaking families, and I'm happy to help with that, and I'm really happy to say that you need some help. But I oftentimes see English-only educators, highly skilled professionals, who the minute they hear some Spanish, so I can possibly do this, I need a translator. And that's not how the world works, and that's not how education works, and that's not how learning works. And so I'm always happy to do that, we're all always happy to do that, but you can do this. You can do this, and the other reinforcing piece is take a look at that list. How much of that list is part of the literacy workshop? How much of that list is part of working with students with learning disabilities? How much of that list is what you do with your own young children at home? How much of that list is appropriate for kids who have organizational and attention issues? How much of that list do we need for ourselves in our own meetings? This is really just about learning language, which is how humans demonstrate learning in schools. So this is really powerful stuff that our ESL teachers are doing, but this is just excellent learning and teaching. And we all have to do this and can do this, and it doesn't necessarily require a highly specialized, oh, I need a translator, I need an interpreter, I need this new written. No, break this down and you can do this. All of us are here to help do it, but we all have to do it for everybody. And it's an important piece to remember too, that we don't talk to our ELLs and say, oh, well, you need this, and you're over here and you need this, because that sense of feeling different and separated is really critical to feeling comfortable in learning language. I work a lot with Nina in particular with some things that we do together, and her Spanish is the most beautiful Spanish I've ever heard from a variety of Spanish speakers, and I daily apologize for selecting. But she helps me keep growing and learning, and I have to know what I'm saying to me at the same time, and she'll help me do that. So I just wanted to interrupt for a minute and show, oh, yeah, that one was this before. I feel like I saw it in this workshop. So this is reinforcing really good teaching.
Okay.
The people have come up with the accent has come up with this list that shows where students are at along their English language proficiency levels, levels 1 through 5. This is on the back of your pink or salmon colored peach. Colorblind, I'm sorry. It's on the back, and It'll run you through listening, speaking, and reading and writing domains and sort of give you an idea of where those students are at. So, for example, if they are level 6, as someone pointed out, but maybe their writing is a 4.2, you can see what they might be capable of, where they would be, things you could expect them to produce in your class. Some things that English language learners will struggle with, just some general ideas, are abstractions, figurative expressions and cliches, words with multiple meanings, maybe not realizing that it could have another alternate meaning. Pronunciation, qualifiers. Use of modals tends to be difficult for English language learners. And the passive voice, sort of kind of flipping the sentence around, you know, which is doing the action and what is being acted upon. These are some things to keep in mind. So when we give assessments to sort of figure out where the students are at, here's a couple of things to consider. Is my assessment clearly assessing the content that my students have learned instead of how well they know English? What changes can I make so that language isn't a barrier? So we're going to look at now and spend some time looking at how to modify perhaps assessments. And some ideas we have used in the past is reducing the length of the assessment, eliminating similar questions or problems. If you're just looking to see if they can do that one skill, you need to show it 3 or 4 times on the test, or just one time. Use simple language in the directions. A lot of times formatting, just pay attention to that, the spacing. Does it all look like a jumble or is it broken up? Images are good for the pictorial representation. And break down lengthy questions into parts. We have some examples of things we've worked on with teachers. This is a mythology test, and at one point, this was all just sort of one list, and we came up with an idea to break it down into 4 per section, sort of eliminate the stress and more of a focus on the content. If they don't know it, they don't know it, but it'll make it easier to get through an assessment if it's maybe broken up or chunked up. Perhaps another example might be just highlighting in a true or false test, sort of drawing attention to what you're focusing on. Any other ideas? You know, just these 2 examples, what might make it more accessible for, say, a level 3 student? Sure. Okay. Okay, so now in your group, you have a green sheet with some case studies on there. I want you to pick one with your group and read the case study. You're going to place the student where they might be on your can-do descriptors. Sort of examine the ability of that student that you pick. And with your group members, after reading through, discuss what modifications might be appropriate for the student.
Feel free to use the can-do descriptors to help you decide what kinds of modifications would be appropriate.
We have some great conversations going on at our tables. We would like to give you a little bit of time to meet with your department members, so if you would like to do that at this time and feel confident about what your group talked about, you may move to a table with your department members and talk about how you might modify your content area for ELL students. I was gonna go over each case study, but I don't think we have time, so should we say that?
Should we try and do at least one case study? Just so
Maybe
we have
after,
an idea?
maybe like in like 5 minutes.
Or maybe before they go over their department, just so that they have a better idea of what to do.
We only have,
Just quickly.
okay. We could do that.
Since they haven't moved yet. You know when
we can, do you think we have time to go through each one, or?
just give it a try, maybe one, and then because they're going to be like 10 minutes late, right?
Okay.
That's really too bad. I would appreciate it. That's really too bad. Also, a small fundraiser, but if you get real well,
Yes, but they said.
All right, did we have any tables do case study number 3, FA2? Did we have anyone do FA2? Let's look over FA2 quickly, and let's, I would like you to share what sorts of modifications you would do for FA2, who is overall a level 3.7.
Well, she's a little bit better in reading than writing. So, for example, with writing, instead of maybe having a length requirement like 4 pages, make that not as long of a requirement, make it more content based versus length based.
Sure, so shorten the assignments. Sure, outline with sentence starters maybe even.
Instead of the written language part of it, we want to demonstrate what they know and maybe do more of a collage showing that this is the key things, and hopefully that matches up to the standards
being what's fed, because a lot of times some students obviously can't write as well as they speak or can demonstrate it. We just want to know what knowledge they have, doesn't know exactly written language form.
Sure, so offering not only the written, but offering choices of making projects or presentations.
Well, we talked about it before history, you know, a lot of times we're not necessarily grading the writing, but provide more feedback. And the fact that, you know, when you're actually reading the response of the students, you know who these students are, so you might already in our minds, we know that we might not necessarily be grading them easier, but we're looking for what they can do.
Sure.
But then providing more feedback to them so that they can continue to expand on
And
that
improve.
curriculum.
Great. Other suggestions? Sure. Awesome.
We were talking about if there was like a sort of short answer or essay type question, if you're not getting what you think they know from it, you could sit down and have a discussion with them to have them verbally tell you
Sure.
what they know and grade what they tell you versus writing.
Yes. Excellent. Any other ideas? So these are things, oh, go ahead. Yes.
Writing and reading.
Graphic organizers are wonderful for our students. All students. So great suggestions. We can all be doing this in our classrooms. And if you're not already sitting with your department members, we would like to give you a few minutes to do that. We wanted to give you more time, but we're running a little late here. So we'll just give you a few minutes to sit with your groups and talk about things that you might be able to do in the next few weeks to really help our ELL succeed in your classrooms.